Darling, have you ever stopped to think that even millionaires, many women end up broke? Look at what happened to Erika Jayne from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Married to one of America's most influential lawyers who allegedly embezzled millions from clients. From a $13 million mansion to a rented apartment for $7,000 per month. Quite a fall, isn't it? And don't think she's an isolated case. We also have Tori Spelling, heiress to the television empire that created Beverly Hills 90210. Daughter of billionaire Aaron Spelling, today she struggles with credit card debt. Or MC Hammer, who earned $33 million in the 90s and declared bankruptcy with $13 million in debt. And do you know why this happens? Because nobody taught them the true rules of money that every high-class person needs to know. This is Duchess Dollars, your favorite millionaire, ready to teach you what I discovered by reading The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And no, darling, I won't talk about boring spreadsheets or how to save by cutting out coffee. That's poor people stuff. We're going to talk about the mindset that separates truly rich women from those who just pretend to be. Just yesterday, I was in my VIP box at a gala event, sipping champagne and observing these nouveau riche spending as if there were no tomorrow. One of them, poor thing, wearing a dress that clearly cost half of her apartment. And then these same people wonder why the money doesn't last. Darling, it's very easy to make money. The hard part is keeping the money. Mr. Millionaire tried to hide this book by Morgan Housel from me. Do you know why? Because he knew that after I read it, I would want even more diamonds. But in fact, the opposite happened. I understood that even with all his money, if I didn't know these 3 lessons, I could end up like so many ex-wives of millionaires, bankrupt. Like Amber Heard, who even after receiving $7 million in the divorce settlement with Johnny Depp, ended up with serious financial problems. Or like the classic story of Cyndi Lauper, who had to declare bankruptcy even after selling millions of records. The first lesson that every high-class woman needs to understand is that financial success is a personal skill. It doesn't depend on how much you earn, but on your behavior with money. Morgan Housel tells the story of Ronald James Redd, a janitor and gas station attendant who died with $8 million. That's right, darling. A janitor richer than many socialites I know. A man who wore patched clothes, drove a 2007 model car, and lived in a modest 2-bedroom house that he bought for $2,000. Meanwhile, Richard Fiscone, a Harvard graduate, Wall Street executive who appeared in Forbes and Fortune magazines, went completely bankrupt in 2008. Why? Because the janitor had rich behavior and the executive had poor behavior disguised as rich. As Morgan Housel says, in the financial market, you can find a janitor with better performance than a Harvard-trained specialist. And I'm not making this up, darling. Ronald simply bought stocks in good companies and waited. None of that neurotic daily stock market watching. He had patience. That virtue that nobody has anymore these days. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, often says that the big money isn't in buying and selling, but in waiting. Ronald understood this perfectly. Meanwhile, the Harvard-educated executive took out loans to renovate mansions and flaunt a lifestyle that not even his millionaire salary could sustain. In the early 2000s, he renovated his mansion with borrowed money, believing his empire would never collapse. Then came 2008 and everything crumbled. The mortgages, the real estate market, and along with it went our Harvard genius. Oh, and do you know something fascinating? Warren Buffett, that cute old man who is one of the richest men in the world, of his $110 billion, $107 billion came after the age of 65. That's right, my dear. He was already a billionaire at 65, but most of his wealth came when most people are already thinking about retirement. Wealth is exponential, darling. Time is your best friend when it comes to money. The curve only starts to get steep after decades of investing. Just yesterday, I was having champagne with Mr. Millionaire, and he told me about a friend of his who started investing just 5 years ago and complains that he isn't getting rich fast enough. My God, what a poor mindset. Wealth is a marathon, not a 100-meter sprint. That's why the nouveau riche almost always lose everything. They want results too quickly. Speaking of time, I want to ask a question that could change your life. Do you want to be rich or just look rich? Think carefully before answering. because subscribing to my channel and leaving a like now might be the smartest decision you've ever made. The Duchess here will teach you to be truly rich, not just a poor girl with a brand name purse. The second lesson from Morgan Housel that literally changed my life. Saving equals your income minus your ego. That's right, darling. It's not how much you earn, but how much you can avoid spending to impress people who don't even like you. Morgan wrote a letter to his son saying, "Son, you think you want an expensive car or a luxury watch, but what you really want is the respect and admiration of people. You think having expensive things will make people admire you. And isn't that exactly what happens? People buy Teslas and Rolexes not for the engineering, but for what these objects represent socially. You're not buying a car or a watch, you're buying a status symbol. And do you know how much this symbol costs? Much more than the price tag. It costs your financial freedom. I know people who earn $2,000 a month and spend everything. I know people who earn $10,000 and spend everything. And I know people who earn $50,000 and spend more than they earn. The problem? Ego. When we start earning more, we think we deserve a better car, a Hermes bag, which, by the way, now costs more than $10,000 for a basic one, a bigger apartment. And so the expense always grows along with the income. Last week, I was at the country club and saw a woman flaunting a $30,000 Birkin. Later, I found out that she lives in a rented apartment. Darling, this is the behavior of someone who will always be poor, no matter how much they earn. As Morgan Housel says, being rich is having assets that generate income. Looking rich is spending a lot of money. I myself fell into this trap, I confess. When Mr. Millionaire gave me my first black card, I went out buying everything I saw. 3 Louis Vuitton bags, Louboutin shoes, Tiffany jewelry. I wanted to show my friends that I had finally made it. But do you know what happened? My husband almost had a heart attack when he saw the $46,000 bill in 1 month. That's when I realized I was just feeding my ego, not building real wealth. The truth that nobody tells you, truly rich people are often discreet. Think about Warren Buffett, a billionaire who has lived in the same house since 1958. Or Mark Zuckerberg, who wears the same basic gray t-shirt every day. This isn't miserliness, it's financial intelligence. They know that showing off is a voluntary tax that fools pay. And there's more. The money you save today is worth much more than what you'll save in the future. Time is literally money, darling. Morgan Housel gives a perfect mathematical example. 2 people. Let's call them Smarty and Late. Smarty starts investing just $300 a month at age 20 and stops completely at 30. That is, she invests for only 10 years and never puts in another penny. Late starts at 30, investing $400 a month, 33% more, and continues until age 65. We're talking about investing for 35 years without stopping. Who ends up with more money? Smarty, with $4.5 million versus just $2.5 million for Late. This isn't an opinion, darling, it's mathematics. Late invested for 25 more years and still lost the race. Why? Because time is the only exponential factor in the wealth formula. At 30, when Late started from zero, Smarty had already accumulated $70,000 working for her. Last week, a 23-year-old follower sent me a DM saying, "Duchess, I'm waiting to earn more to start investing. Now, I need to have fun, buy nice clothes, and travel." I replied, "Darling, you're trading millions in the future for a few drinks and shoes now. Think about it, would you trade $10,000 in clothing purchases and parties today for $100,000 in the future?" Because that's the math we're talking about. So, darling, stop spending as if there were no tomorrow just to post on Instagram, because there will be a tomorrow and you'll want to be rich in it, not just in Instagram filters. And you know what else? Life expectancy keeps increasing. Recent data shows that for each year that passes, life expectancy increases by almost a year for high-class people with access to good medical care. This means you'll probably live much longer than your parents and grandparents. Do you want to spend 40 years retired being poor? I don't. Now, the third and most important lesson from the book. Know how much is enough. Here's the secret that the truly rich know, and the poor disguised as rich never understand. This lesson literally separates who will maintain wealth from who will lose it. Morgan Housel tells the story of Bernard Madoff. Have you heard of this man? He created the largest Ponzi scheme in history, $64 billion. And we're not talking about just any scammer. Madoff was the president of NASDAQ. He was a legend on Wall Street, respected by everyone, close to the regulators. The shocking part? He already had a completely legitimate business that generated between $25 and $50 million per year. That's right. He was already legitimately rich. His brokerage firm, Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, was responsible for 9% of all transactions on the New York Stock Exchange. He was already at the top. But do you know what happened? He didn't know when to stop. He didn't know what was enough. Greed blinded him. He wanted more, and more, even when he already had everything. And because of that, he ended up sentenced to 150 years in prison. One of his sons committed suicide on the 2-year anniversary of the scheme's revelation. The other died of cancer, and his wife was so disgusted that she didn't even want his ashes when he died. A complete tragedy. And all of this could have been avoided if he had stopped when he was already rich. On one occasion, at the beginning of the scheme, regulators discovered something suspicious and asked him to return $411 million to clients. He managed to do this by taking loans from acquaintances. He could have stopped there, but he didn't stop. The rich clients themselves begged to continue investing with him. As the philosopher Seneca says, "Poor are those who need a lot. When you're always wanting more, no matter how much money you have, you're still poor in spirit." True wealth is in knowing when you already have enough. Last week, Mr. Millionaire and I were at our summer house in Aspen, and we met a couple of successful investors. He told me that he sold all his Amazon shares in 2016 after they appreciated 500%. Many laughed at him for selling too early. The shares went up much more afterwards. But do you know what he did? He bought a beach house, invested the rest in safe securities, and now enjoys a peaceful life with his family. He knew how much was enough. I myself learned this the hard way. I've had 3 Chanel flat bags and still wanted the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. For what? To impress whom? My little dog Chanel didn't even look at the new bags anymore. That's when I realized that I was in an endless race like a hamster on a wheel, always wanting more, never satisfied. So here's the naked truth that no finance influencer wants to tell you. Don't force your money into impossible gains. Don't risk what you already have for what you don't need. Know when it's time to be content and enjoy what you've already achieved. If you're investing, know when to sell. If you bought Bitcoin at $5,000 and it went to $50,000, maybe it's time to realize some profit. Don't always wait for a little bit more because greed is what destroys fortunes. As the great investor Bernard Baruch said, "I made my fortune by selling too early." Better to sell too early and secure your profits than to wait for the top that never comes and lose everything in the fall. In summary, my dear, behavior beats knowledge in finance. Compound interest is a force of nature, but it only works if you have time and consistency. Your ego is your greatest enemy in building wealth. The more you try to impress others, the less impressive your bank account will be. And finally, knowing what is enough is the true mark of wealth. There's a phrase I love. Happiness is not having everything you want, but wanting everything you have. And that's exactly what Morgan Housel teaches in this amazing book. You don't need to become a hermit to get rich, darling. I myself have my indulgences. But the difference is that today I buy the Chanel bag after my investments pay for it, not before. I buy with dividends, not with capital. That's the secret that the truly rich don't tell. Oh, and I left links to the book in the first pinned comment. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Duchess Dollars is here to help you stop being poor and finally experience what it's like to be truly rich. Don't be just another woman with a maxed out credit card, an average income, and dreams of wealth that will never come true. Be the woman that rich men respect, not for your curves, but for your investment portfolio. Comment below. Rich and wise if this video changed your way of thinking about money. And remember, rich works with glamour, poor works with sweat. Choose glamour, darling. But also choose the financial intelligence that comes with it. After all, darling, if you can't be born rich, at least you can die rich. Kisses from your Duchess Dollars. Until the next video.